Traffic is really heavy today. What games are you playing, kids?
We are playing SimCity, madam.
Is that interesting?
Yes, this game is a great test of the ability to planning.
Isn't it? That sounds a little difficult.
We have to make sure that electricity grids, water channels, police stations, fire stations, supermarkets are properly distributed in every community.
Otherwise, the number of residents will be reduced and the city will not develop.
It seems that you should consider many aspects to build it.
Yes, but the most important thing is road planning.
Is that so?
Yeah, in the first developed communities, there are more people and roads had to be widened.
With the development of economical, there are more and more cars on the road, and the road is more and more blocked.
It's a pity that the road in reality can't be winded casually. Otherwise, it won't be stuck in traffic.
And unlike in the game, where all roads are horizontal and vertical, roads are planned according to the river and the terrain.
Urban planning in real life is much harder than it is in games.
Yes, in order to let the citizens have a more comfortable and convenient life, urban construction is always on the way of progress.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the class.
Hello, everyone.
Today, we are going to talk about the beauty of the city. The earliest city is the city of Memphis, appearing in about 3200 BC at the southern end of the Nile. And in China, the city design was regulated in the Book of Africa's record in the Warring State period. Urban design, a discipline focusing on the city plan, the city layout, the city appearance, the city function, and the city public space, appeared in 1950. Different scholars gave different definitions. Charles Abrams holds the view that urban design is the rule and the dogma given to the city function and modeling, the rule of which is to seek the harmony and unity of styles between the city and the structures in neighborhood. Jonathan Bennett, the writer of urban design, thinks that urban design is to shape a city, to manifest its image and beauty as a whole.
Frank Emma takes the more practical view that urban design is one of all human designs to give a better arrangement of different units of the city, such as houses, shops, factories, schools, offices, transportation, and parks, in order to meet the need of human life in society,
economy,
and beauty. The urban design under the cultural framework is to inherit the urban culture of different ethnic groups, combine the realities of the spatial pattern, and adopt advanced technological means to plan a distinctive and comfortable and sustainable urban space for the citizens.
William Cooper, a great poet, wrote, "God creates the country, and man creates the city. Man's creation of the city is the city design." Louis Mumford believed that the city is most valuable collective invention only behind language in the culture, communication. To explore the vocabulary of design culture in the creation of cities is of help to mass language and is cultural spreading and tracing the road of city development.
The city is made up of space and buildings. On the one hand, the bigger space outside surrounds the city. On the other hand, the small space inside surrounds buildings. Thus forms a big city pattern with space and buildings. In the history of humans, the pattern has greatly changed. But when looking back, and it is found out that city culture design language remains internal standard of city design cultural aesthetics.
Chinese archaeologists
excavated 二里头 site in the village of 二里头 in Yanshi City. By far the earliest ruins in China, 二里头 site is located by the ancient Luo River with Mount Mang to the north and the Yellow River at the back, covering an area of
about 3 square kilometers.
where were unearthed the earliest royal city. The first big capital with clear city plan layout, the earliest axis, the earliest large 四合院, the earliest group of bronze ritual musical instruments, the earliest bronze melee weapon, the earliest bronze casting workshop, the earliest turquoise stone workshop, the earliest use of two-wheels car, the earliest turquoise roof, the earliest overseas exchange, and so on.
According to age programs about 二里头 culture, in 2006, it is estimated its first period traced back to about 1750 BC, and it is certain that 二里头 culture is of great reference value to study Chinese civilization origin, national rise, cities origin, capital construction, palace layout, and other major issues, as the prologue in exploration of the Xia culture.
As was mentioned above, Crete civilization disappeared in the 17th century in a volcano, and the cultural memory of the ancient city in the west was left in Mycenaean civilization. Mycenaean civilization had its heyday from the mid-17th century BC to the 12th century BC, the power and wealth of which can be seen from the legacy of the strong castle and the gold and silver treasures. According to Homer's epic Iliad, at the beginning of the 12th century BC, king of Mycenae, Agamemnon, as commander-in-chief of the Hellenic world, led the coalition to fight against Troy. Troy is a city along the west coast of Anatolia. Mycenae won the Troy War, but 10 years of war weakened Mycenae greatly, and then it was conquered by a powerful nation called Dorians from the south. Mycenaean civilization went into a sharp decline until it was gradually forgotten.
Mycenae city is located in the northeast of Peloponnese as a king city about 3,700 years old, 9 miles about from Cyrenaica of Inogen. 二里头 culture and Mycenaean civilization existed at the same era, and archaeology of Mycenaean site echoed the Troy War in Homer epic, confirming the Troy War was not only a literary creation but a real existence in history. So, in Western modern archaeology, archaeological objects such as gold, bronze, and other precious metal items give evidence to Western ancient civilization. 二里头 culture had no text story for it, but it looks more like a real city or capital than Mycenaean cities. Civilization just by unearthed palace ground and grand appliances.
Half a century of archaeological job in 二里头 displayed its careful planning, neat layout and large palace buildings in central area, with a main road, network connecting traffic and its periphery and segmentation of different functional areas, which has so far been the earliest planned capital city for regulating the construction of the ancient capital of China afterwards, and pushing the human urban culture further back to ancient times.
Chinese primitive society enforced the system of the state-owned property and the system to abdicate voluntarily in the 22nd century BC. Afterwards, with private ownership arising gradually, the private products needs to be exchanged. Private property need to be protected, and the walls for defenses and the malls for trendy makeup cities. The earliest site of the palace city was excavated in 二里头 site, and the palace is called Cheng as the inner city, and the outer city is called Guo. Thus was Chengguo first appeared to stand for the city. The earliest Chinese cities only had Cheng, no Guo. Guo came into being in the Warring States period, with the idea in the spring and autumn of Wu and Yue that Cheng is built for the king, Guo is built for residence. As in an ancient Qi city of Linzi, Shandong province, there is a small Cheng and a big Guo. So Chinese early cities gradually formed a city system. As artificers record compiled in the Warring States period records, when the architect designs the city, it will cover 9 li squared, with 3 entrances on each side, 9 longitudes across with 9 latitudes inside, 1,000 northern roads wide, enough to run 9 cars, temples for the ancestors on the left and for the nation on the right, the palace in the front and the malls at the rear. The development of Chinese cities later has followed this rule, and buildings are built on these bases. In the Tang Dynasty, the city of Chang'an was located in the northern part of the central axis of the whole city, which could be regarded as the well-developed shape of the ancient capital city in China.
China's city design pattern is a manifestation of a human nature. The square city towards spacious gates, convenient marks, square places, the upright axis, symmetry, a back hill to block wind and sand, the river to nourish the sentient beings. All this decided the aesthetic standard of China's city design culture. Such modeling is kept subconsciously. The ancient cities of Chang'an and Luoyang have disappeared, but the ruins are still left with traces of the design, which is recognized as a Chinese city as imaging, and even the overall planning of Beijing city today, it will be recognized as a true image of the Chinese city.
二里头 at the earliest axis, corresponding to Beijing's axis, 7.8 kilometers long, and only China has such grand design language. As we praised by Chinese architect Liang Sicheng, the world's longest and greatest southern-northern axis runs through the whole city. Beijing's particular splendid order is established along the axis, rolling from back to front, symmetrical on the left and right. So the majestic lies in the axis stretching north and south without being cut in. The axis starts at the southern end from Yongding Gate of the outer city, then stretches to north through the center of the outer city and Tiananmen into the inner city, through Wu Gate into the Forbidden City, through Council Chamber and the Palace, finally into the Clock Tower at the north end of the inner city.
But in the latest planning of Beijing, the axis will be traveled. The axis takes southern-northern direction because it functioned to connect the universe kingdom to the world. The Chinese believe that the North Star is the center of universe kingdom. The ruler there rules the universe facing north, and the people in the world will take the same direction. But in the new planning of Beijing west-east axis, is taken into consideration and extended a little. When we compare Beijing and Washington in the city axis, we find Beijing's axis takes the direction of north to south, while Washington has a southern-northern axis and a west-east axis intersected. But today, Beijing takes the same model as Washington. This is the boring and impact of culture. Maybe it implies differently but takes the same mode.
Western cities were mainly in the form of city-states. Some scholars think the Mesopotamia plain along the river is the birthplace of the city-state system. The Mesopotamia civilization consists of Sumerian civilization, Babylonian civilization, and the Assyrian civilization, and the city-states originated in the Sumerian civilization. According to historical records, 12 city-states were built, largest of which had 50,000 people, with architecture features like earthwork structure in city walls and earthwork structure in houses, good at using a sun-dried mud brick. The Sumerian civilization was a new civilization of the decline of the masonry in 1100 BC, developing until 800 BC, when ancient Greece came into being. So, the ancient Greek culture was under the influence of Mesopotamia civilization, including letters, trade modes, as well as a city-state system that was existing along two rivers.
The archaeological excavation and historical data show that a lot of public city facilities were built in ancient Greece and Rome, such as temples, baths, triumphal arches, and theater, which have been kept on in modern European and American culture in understanding of city and publicity and in connection with the modern notion of excellent compatibility. After ancient Greece, generations of urban thinkers rose, whose focus on the city and on the publicity affected the designers of later generations. For example, Alexander the Great built the city of Alexandria in 332 BC at the mouth of the Nile, the design of which was a publicity in botanical garden museum, library, lighthouse, etc., as the basic city plan and the basic language of churches, temples in ancient Greece, squares, castles, rivers, and states.
In the Western history, the frequent changes of the society and the social ideology led to more frequent changes in city design pattern than in China. As mentioned above, the ancient Greece is the cradle of European civilization. Compared to the Eastern cities with high walls and a regular pattern, the ancient Greece emphasized that the city itself was located in natural background. Then, ancient Rome put more emphasis on direct and practical function. Forcibly modified terrain established a spatial order for the whole city, and
utilized
the axis system and perspective means to transform the ancient Greek irregular space into neat, elegant, huge, and open space. The European city in the medieval is generally considered the cradle of Western capitalism, with buildings correlated to the surrounding environment. Because the city expanded and the traffic grew, the road was of greater importance than ever. In the Renaissance, the design of city streets and square did not depend on the application value, but on the form. Afterwards, in Baroque design, the city reflected the geometric aesthetics completely, breaking up natural city patterns in the medieval.
Constructing.
The urban axis system, neat and in great order.
Along with the modern industrial revolution in the 19th century, the ideal city model was put forward. In 1898, Howard's Garden City was set forth, emphasizing urban and rural coordination, balanced development by decentralization of population to return to nature. In 1917, Himmler proposed industrial city. Firstly, to reduce the impact of environment on residential area by moving the enterprise out of the city. At the same time, Corsair put forward the assumption of a bright city in 1912, designing a grid road systems in a straighter symmetry, and for the first time, the city highways were designed as axes to intersect at the geometric center of the city. Although broad care the city proposed by Wright in 1924 was unpractical, his living dream has had influence on the later city design.
The Western city design experienced different periods, but the basic language of design culture remains to be churches, squares, castles, rivers, sculptures, botanical gardens, museums, libraries, and castles of the medieval. Today, we have studied the basic vocabulary of urban design culture in China and the West. That's all for today.
See
you next time.